Hi everyone, welcome to my talk. My name's Alex and I'm a product adoption lead. We're going to talk today about how to make your workdays work for you, and also, because we're now mostly remote in most jobs, how to plan your days so it doesn't overwhelm you and you don't burn yourself out. Before I start, I just want to mention that all views expressed in this video are my own and not my employer's. So let's get started. Have you ever felt that you have too many meetings and you don't actually have time for focused, meaningful work? Well, I did, and I tried to find ways to mitigate that and improve it and have it not affect my work and my focus time. I don't know if you've ever had maybe people ask you if you want to jump on a video call in the middle of you actually working on something really important, and then you had to switch your focus and come back to it. And you actually forgot what you were doing and you forgot kind of like your flow. So if you have experienced that, then this talk is definitely for you. And we're going to look at a couple of ways in which we can actually make it better. Before we start with that, we're actually going to look at what is burnout. And I found this definition of burnout through one of the tweets of a lady that works in academia, and actually comes from the Burnout self-test. I'm going to link at the end to this test that you can actually take, and you can see if you're actually at risk of burning out, or if you're already burnt out, or actually everything's fine and you don't have to worry about it. The thing that I really liked about this definition was the second part, and it was that it comes as the things that inspire passion and enthusiasm are stripped away, and tedious or unpleasant things crowd in. And I think for me, when I started experiencing burnout, it was that crowding in and the feeling that I don't have time to do everything I need to do that was actually really impacting my mental well-being and the work that I was doing. So about a year ago, I started to do some changes that helped me prevent the crowding in. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And you can grab a piece of paper if you want to do it real time. You can open a blank document if you want to do it on your computer, or you can just sit back and listen and then kind of like take some notes maybe and see what you want to implement for yourself. So throughout our time together, we're going to be looking at some tools that I use, and there's nothing really fancy really. Preparation, action, some tips if you can't really work out the scheduling into your schedule, and some next steps and resources that I've found really, really useful. So let's start with the tools and what I use to make it all happen. So they're nothing, like I said, they're nothing really fancy. There are things that you probably use every day and you don't really think about. One is my email calendar, and now I'm talking about my work calendar because I want to be able to show other people when my working hours end, or when I'm not available, or when I want to have lunch, and not have people put meetings or catch-ups in that time. A to-do list or a Kanban, I'm sure that if you're working in technology or really any other company or industry, you're probably going to be having some sort of way of keeping track of your tasks, of your to-dos. It could even be like sticky notes or a pen and paper list. It doesn't have to be necessarily like Jira or Trello or Asana, but they all really help. And then you need some focus time. I usually like to put my focus time on a Friday, so I know that everything's set for the next week and I don't have to worry about it. But in case you actually prefer Mondays because you feel like you don't really want to think about your next week before you start your weekend, that works too. You just need to kind of find something that works for you. Again, we're going to move on to preparation, but I just wanted to mention that this is from my experience and this is from the jobs and the roles that I've had. And just take it with a pinch of salt and see how you could maybe apply some of these to your work. But obviously, it's not going to be the same for everyone because we all have different companies that we work for, different roles, different experiences of working life. So the way that I prepare is by splitting all of the types of times that I have in my workday into 3 categories. And one is the priorities, which is what do I actually need to deliver, and what do I actually need to do as a priority for the next week or for the week after that? So these are things like, you might have reporting that you need to have done. You might have campaigns that you're running. You might need to record a video or do a webinar or ship some code or finish some features. It could be anything, really. And these are the ones that are critical, that you get some focus time to work on and you don't get distracted and you actually just kind of like get into your flow. Then you have the time too, and that's how I name everything that has to do with my growth, my well-being, my learning, my training, my networking, my one-to-ones. So these are important times for your well-being and not becoming overwhelmed, but also for your growth. But sometimes people kind of think of them as things that you could probably not do. So maybe you don't have lunch today because you have to finish that work, or you don't have a break every day because you have too much work to do, or you don't really make time to learn anything or do your training. But for me, they're time too. And if it's time too, then it probably needs to have a schedule to it. Then you have your core meetings, and these are meetings that are actually useful and necessary. They might be pair programming time. They might be stand-ups where you tell people what you've been working on and they tell you what they've been working on. They could be town halls for your company. They could be monthly team meetings. They could be celebration meetings. They could be anything that actually is important to you to do your role, to celebrate your achievements, to celebrate your team, to discuss issues, or actually to keep on track of things that you need to do. So also, I will say, most of the time, if you get invited to a meeting and it doesn't have an agenda or a plan, it's probably not going to go very well, and you could probably excuse yourself and not attend. And another tip would be to actually use optional on your meetings. So actually tell people they're optional so they don't feel like they actually have to attend. I feel like not enough people do that. Right, so next we're going to go to how I actually do it. So I actually start planning on Friday, and I plan for 2 weeks in advance. You could do more, you could do 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I find that anything over 4 weeks is probably not going to be that relevant because you can't really see that far into the future, or I can't personally. For me, it's already become a habit. Some of them are recurring events that I have in my calendar, so I don't have to put them in every week. I kind of can do it in about 5-10 minutes on a Friday, but I still put the time aside for it to make sure that I do it every week. So this is representative of a 5-day working week, but we're just going to work with that example to start with. I also have a couple of examples of flexible working and how a schedule might look like for people that have a more flexible schedule, for example, working 4 days or working half days on some days. Right. So I'm going to start, and you can follow along if you want. You can make like your own little calendar. Or you can actually do this exercise afterwards. It's up to you. So I first start with my email and stand-up in the mornings, and I have an hour that I dedicate to this. And I tend to only check my emails and reply at the beginning and the end of my day. I'll probably, if I have time left, I will check it throughout the day, or if someone messages me and says, hey, I've sent you a really important email, can you have a look? Then again, I'll have a look when they ask me. But generally, I try to not pay attention to notifications for my email because it distracts me, and then I get caught into the email and I start replying, and I don't actually focus on the work that I was doing, and it breaks my train of thought and my flow, and I don't get stuff done. So I reserve time to find out what other people are working on and any blockers that they might have, and also reply to any emails that came in the previous day. I work across time zones with different teams in different continents. So generally, I do the morning to see if there's anything I've missed since the previous day, and then I do the evening to make sure that everyone has had their answers or resources that I need to send them before I log off and they continue their days. So the next part is the meetings. And again, I'm saying this is actual meetings, so meetings that you need to be in. Again, if you are attending meetings, maybe with half of your team, you could talk between yourselves and see if maybe one of you could attend instead of all of you attend. And then the other informs everyone of what happened and any decisions and actions you might need to do as a team. Again, I'm really a strong advocate of just sending a wrap-up email after meetings that have actions and really important follow-ups, just so people have it in mind, and also include people that might not have been in the meeting, but might be impacted by those actions. Again, that's just to make it a bit more efficient and to make sure that not everyone has to go there. And not everything needs to be a meeting. So I think with the remote working, it's become really blurry of what needs to be a meeting and what doesn't, and what you should kind of use messaging for or emails for, but not everything has to be a meeting, trust me on that. And people will thank you for not making it a meeting. Right, so then we're gonna go and we're gonna put in the time on the Friday for me of actually planning the week. And then usually I like to combine it with having a virtual coffee with someone that I admire in my company, or someone that I haven't talked to in a while, or someone that I used to work with, just to kind of balance it after I've planned my week. I don't want to start thinking about all of the things that I have to do. I want to disconnect and connect to something else. And I find that having a virtual coffee meeting with someone really helps me to like forget about all the stuff that I'm going to have to do the next week. Then you have your breaks, and I tend to take an hour for lunch, and that lunch hour is not necessarily lunch. It could be meditating, it could be yoga, it could be going for a walk, going to the shops, calling my mom, other things. But please make sure you take a break. It's just because I've been working like really intensely in the morning, and then I want to have a break, reset, and then start again with the afternoon. Right, and then we have all of the time too. So your growth time, your learning time, your training time, and your one-to-ones, your networking. And I tend to put these towards the end of the week, because I know that in the beginning of the week, I'll probably have a lot of things that I need to deliver, and I want my managers and my teams to feedback on and iterate. So I'm gonna send those first, and then I'm gonna do my learning and my training in the second part of the week. Also, some of my colleagues work Monday to Wednesday or Monday to Thursday, so I try to do things that are independent towards the end of the week to accommodate them as well. Then we have the end of the day, which again, I mentioned before, I tend to reserve for emails and follow-ups. Sometimes because I work with people in America and Latin America, I tend to actually sometimes have to have meetings at those times, but I always try to at least have half an hour to just check and reply to any last emails that I get before I leave. Also, I'm the type of person who has a zero email inbox, so I clean everything by the end of the day, and then I clean everything when I start the second day. Right, so then we have the actual important parts, and these are the focused work blocks. And as you can see, most of the time I try to have at least 2 hours of focused work time. Sometimes I might finish with my stand-up and my email a bit earlier so I can get started a bit like quicker. Sometimes some meetings might get canceled or moved around, which is great for me because then I get some more focused time. But I do try to have at least 1, 2, 3 blocks a week that are like 2 hours, 3 hours straight of a focused time to work. So then I also leave some free slots, and the free slots are because there are people that will come up to you a day before and say, hey, we need to have a catch up on X issue, or we need to follow up on something, or do you have some time to help me with this bug and troubleshoot it with me and pair program with me to solve it. So this happens, and that's why I tend to leave a couple of free blocks, because I also work a lot with the Americas. I do try to leave them in the afternoon, so then I make sure that I'm actually available when they're available. Also, I do want to say that in the year that I've been doing this, I've only had 2 or 3 people reach out to me to say they couldn't find a meeting time in my calendar. This made me understand and learn that actually most meetings aren't that important, and if people really need to like talk to you, they're going to message you and they're going to tell you, I can't find a slot, I need you to help me to find a slot. because it's really important. But as I said, in a year, I've only had 2-3 people that have reached out to me to say that. So that means they could either wait until the next week, or they don't need to schedule it, or they could just make your free blocks work for them too. Right. So now I'm going to show you quickly a couple of examples for flexible working schedules and how that works. I have been doing a part-time master's, and I've had Thursdays off. So this is kind of how it looked like when I didn't actually work on Thursdays. And I tried to put, again, I've tried to put like most of my meetings and most of my focused work in the beginning of the week, and then do my learning training towards the end of the week. I still had a couple of free blocks because people tend to usually be freer on Friday. So if they did want to catch up with me, that would probably work best for them too. And if you work for days, maybe you want to do your focus work at the beginning of the week to let people kind of like take it in, feedback, and then by the time you come back on Friday, you actually have quite a good idea of what you might need to plan for the following week for your priorities. Right, and then we have another example. That's a flexible working schedule with working half a day on Thursday and Friday, but working longer hours Monday to Wednesday. You might, if you work with Asia Pacific or in Europe, then you might want to consider your Thursday or Fridays having a block of free time just in case some of your counterparts in those locations want to actually talk to you and want to schedule a meeting. So the important bit is actually making sure that you plan your week and you don't let your week happen to you. So you need to be like purposeful in how you manage your calendar and how you manage your time to make sure that you get everything you want to get done, but you also have opportunities to connect and chat to your teams and to your colleagues. And also that you make time for your breaks, and you make time for your learning, and you make time for your training, and you learn how to say no when you don't want to go to a meeting, or you don't think it's useful, or you don't think you have to go. And if that kind of freedom is not applicable to you, I do have a couple of other tips that you can see on the screen. So I do have a couple of tips on how you can still try to manage your schedule even if you don't have that much agency over your schedule and what happens to your working time. So maybe try to book 25 meetings instead of half-an-hour meetings. I assure you that 5 minutes shouldn't really matter to a 30-minute meeting. And it gives people the opportunity to actually go have a glass of water, stretch, maybe have a comfort break. Because if you look at other people's calendars and you see that they have back-to-back meetings, I can guarantee you they will be so grateful if you give them 5-10 minutes back to actually be able to have a small break in between all of these like sea of meetings. Also, maybe ask your colleagues, ask your manager if all of you need to be in a meeting, if you have meetings in which maybe 2, 3, 4 of you are in the same meeting when you shouldn't. Also, try to have maybe one-to-one walking phone meetings where you can actually talk to your manager maybe while you're having a walk outside. Also, walking while discussing and brainstorming has been shown to enable you to be more creative. Also, try maybe scheduling your out of office hours. So if you're working across time zones like I do, sometimes it's really hard to explain to people you're not actually in the office and you can't just stay until 8, 9 p.m. to actually talk to them. So scheduling your out of office when you're not working. So if you work 9 to 5, 5 to 9, you have an out of office in your calendar. So no one can book it because you're out of office. They can message you and say, hey, I was thinking about putting a meeting at 5:30. It was the only time I could find. But like I said, people don't really tend to do that. So, you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't attend the meeting. Also, don't worry if you don't manage to finish 100% of the things that you've put in your priority blocks in that time. Over time, you're going to get better with estimating how long it's going to take for you to do things. But it's just meant to be a reminder and a block in your calendar so other things don't creep in and crowd in like the Burnout definition said. So it's meant to help you make sure that you have the time to do focused work when you want to do the focused work, and people don't just shove meetings in your calendar that maybe could be an email or could be a message or could be next week. There are a couple of other tips there. Make sure to have breaks. Make sure to have dedicated email reading, replying times, because it makes it easier to not get distracted if you know that you're only doing it 3 times a day, for example. And yeah, just take care of yourself and make sure that you're doing the best for you, and you try to take control as much as you can of your schedule and your days, and you make your work days work for you. So the last thing I want to mention is that there are a couple of resources that I really, really recommend. The Joy of Work by Bruce Daisley is amazing. I love that book. He also does a podcast that's called Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat, and it's really, really interesting, and it's all about the world of work. There's also the Remote Worker Survival Guide, the Burnout Self-Test that I mentioned the Burnout definition from. That's definitely really interesting. You can actually take it to see where you are on the scale, and all of the links are in here, and I will share the link to the deck in the next slide. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will be purposeful with your time and with your work time, and it's going to help you make sure that you're not going to burn yourself out. That's all from me. Thank you very much. If you want to chat, you can find me on Twitter at Alexandra MMR, and you can get the slides at bit.ly/workdayswork. Thank you.